Whenever I move to a new city, I like to find a church home. This started when I first moved from Gary, Indiana, my hometown, to Washington, D.C. to attend school at Howard University. So as a first-year student, I lived in a dorm, and on Sunday nights, whenever I would walk outside of the dorm, there would be about 2 to 3 charter buses lined up outside the dorm, and they were from a local church. And people from that church would be standing outside of the buses, and they would invite us students to come to Sunday evening service and Sunday dinner. And I remember the first time I got one of those invites, I thought to myself, man, they really know their target audience. That as college students who may have stayed out a little late on Saturday night, we weren't always in the best position to go to church on Sunday morning. But Sunday night, that was a good time. And then they fed us too. And I'm not talking about some frozen food that they heated up or something that you would eat if you visited me in my apartment. But real authentic soul food that your mama, your daddy, your auntie, and them would be in the kitchen pouring love into. And so we would get to the church, we would go down to the basement, and then we would eat really good, and then we would come up for praise and worship, and the gospel music would be amazing, and then it would always be a powerful sermon and word. And the other thing I really loved about these Sunday nights is that it was a sense of community, particularly with young adults. So it wasn't just Howard students, but they also invited students from other schools in the area there. And I had a church friend, Nikki, who attended one of the other schools. And I called Nikki my church friend because we didn't really hang out outside of church at all. I didn't have her number, we didn't talk on the phone, but at church on those Sunday nights, that was my girl. So I always sat in the right section in the third row in the sanctuary, and she always sat in that same section in the second row, so right in front of me. And so before the service, we would talk, catch up about life, and then after service, we talk about the word, what we got out of it. And I remember one Sunday, Nikki wasn't there. I didn't think too much about it. Then a second Sunday passed. Again, no Nikki. Third Sunday. And then I didn't really realize how long she had been gone until she returned back into the second row. And that's when it hit me that it had been several weeks since I seen her. So when she came back to her seat, I said, Nikki, girl, where have you been? And when I asked her that question, I could sense that something inside of her shifted. She gave me this look that said, you don't want to know where I've been. Wherever Nikki had been those last few weeks, she didn't want to talk about it or even think about it. Now, at that time, I was so young, and it wasn't too much in my life that I didn't want to talk about or think about. I was 18, 19 years old, and so much of life hadn't happened to me yet. This was before I lost my younger sister, Kimberly, and my younger brother, Darnell, to gun violence. This was before the death of my daughter, Evelyn Anise LeBron. This is before I knew what depression really felt like, or what it was like to try to manage everyday life with deep heartbreak. About a year ago, I moved to Boston from Newark, New Jersey, and a few months in, my spirit led me to a historically Black church in the south end of Boston called Union United Methodist Church, which is my current church home. And y'all, I love my church. It has been such a beautiful gift to me, such a blessing and such an important part of my healing journey. So usually I like to go, if not every Sunday, at least 3 out of 4 Sundays in a month. However, as this past spring, as the season started to change and work piled up on top of school deadlines, on top of physical and mental health challenges, it became harder and harder for me to make it out of bed and out of the dark places of my mind and to church on Sundays. And so first one Sunday passed, and then another Sunday and another Sunday, and then Easter was coming up, and I'm like, all right, God, I made a promise to myself and to God, I'm gonna be in church on Easter Sunday. So sure enough, on Easter Sunday, I made it to Union, and when I walked through those big red church doors into the sanctuary, my soul felt at home and at peace. Now, y'all, I made it, but I was late. I was real late. I was like 15, 20 minutes late. And apparently a lot of people had on their spirit to come to church on Easter Sunday. And so the place was packed. Like, it was the most packed I ever seen it. So I was in like the way, way back. But that was okay. The service was beautiful. And at one point in the service, I felt a tap on my shoulder. And when I turned around, it was my church friend, Solomon. And when Solomon saw me, he had the biggest smile on his face, and he said, "Joy, it's so good to see you." He gave me this big hug, and y'all, I felt so loved and so relieved. And I think the reason I felt so loved and so relieved is because when Solomon saw me, he didn't lead with curiosity or concern. He wasn't like, "Joy, where you been these last few weeks?" Or he didn't ask me to think about the dark places that had kept me away for the few weeks I was gone. No, Solomon simply said, "Joy, it's good to see you." And my heart replied, "It's good to be seen." Thank you.